The sky above Earth shimmered like a mirage as the alien fleet descended into orbit. Massive ships, their surfaces glistening with an iridescent sheen, blocked out the sun in patches across continents. Humanity had always wondered what first contact would look like: peaceful greetings, shared knowledge, or perhaps cautious diplomacy. What they got instead was a cold, calculated ultimatum. Overseer Kelthun stood on the bridge of his flagship, his towering frame draped in organic armor that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins. To him, this blue planet and its inhabitants were nothing more than data points. His species, the Vorthik, had conquered countless worlds, assimilating weaker life forms into their hive mind collective. They saw themselves as apex predators of the galaxy, unstoppable and supreme. And now, Earth, a fragile world teeming with chaos and disorder, was next. Kelthun's voice boomed through speakers mounted on satellites orbiting Earth. It wasn't spoken in any human language but translated instantly by advanced algorithms embedded within the transmission. Inhabitants of this primitive sphere, he began, his tone dripping with disdain. You have been deemed unworthy of autonomy. Surrender your resources, your technology, and your lives to the Vorthik Collective, or face annihilation. The message echoed across every device capable of receiving it. Radios, televisions, smartphones. People froze mid-step, staring at screens or listening intently as fear gripped them. Governments scrambled to respond. Military forces went on high alert, and ordinary citizens huddled together, unsure if these words signaled the end of humanity. But not everyone cowered. Deep within a fortified bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Marcus Hale watched the broadcast with steely eyes. A veteran of wars both terrestrial and extraterrestrial, he knew panic wouldn't save Earth. Turning to his assembled team, he said, "They think we're weak, primitive. Let's show them why no one survives on this death world without being stronger than steel." Among those present was Sergeant Elena Vasquez, leader of the Apex Vanguard, a specialized unit composed of humans who had grown up in Earth's most hostile environments. From volcanic islands to frozen tundras, these individuals weren't just soldiers. They were survivors. Their bodies carried scars earned from battling nature itself, and their minds were sharpened by years of overcoming impossible odds. Elena leaned forward, her dark hair tied back tightly, her expression unreadable. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, "they've made their move. Now it's our turn." Hale nodded. "We don't negotiate with invaders. We adapt, improvise, and crush them." As orders flew across communication channels, the Apex Vanguard prepared for deployment. Their mission was clear: intercept the alien scouts already descending toward Earth's surface and send a message loud enough for the entire fleet to hear: "You do not mess with humanity." Meanwhile, the Vorthik scouts landed silently in the dense Amazon rainforest, their sleek forms blending eerily with the shadows. They moved methodically, scanning everything around them. These aliens didn't understand what they were dealing with. They assumed Earth's ecosystem would be simple to dominate, just like all the others before it. What they didn't know was that Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a death world. And its people. They weren't afraid to fight dirty. High above, Kelthun observed the initial reports trickling in from his scouts. So far, so good. But deep down, a flicker of unease stirred. Something about this species felt different. The Amazon rainforest was alive with sound. The chirping of insects, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of birds. But beneath this natural symphony, something unnatural stirred. The Vorthik scouts moved silently through the dense foliage, their sleek, insect-like bodies blending seamlessly with the shadows. They were here to gather data, to assess humanity's weaknesses before the full invasion began. Unbeknownst to them, they weren't alone. Sergeant Elena Vasquez crouched low behind a thick tree trunk, her rifle slung across her back. Her team had been tracking the aliens for hours, moving quietly through the jungle like ghosts. The Apex Vanguard wasn't about flashy displays or brute force. They were hunters, predators who thrived in chaos. And right now, they were hunting. Elena signaled to her squad using hand gestures. 2 soldiers flanked left while another pair moved to the right, encircling the unsuspecting Vorthik. Each member of the vanguard carried minimal gear, just enough weapons and tools to get the job done. Overpacking was a luxury Earth's harshest environments never allowed, and it made them deadly efficient. As the Vorthik approached a small village nestled deep within the forest, one of the scouts extended a long, sinewy tendril toward a frightened villager. The alien's movements were precise, almost surgical, as it attempted to assimilate the human into its hive mind network. The villager screamed, trying to pull away, but the tendril wrapped around his arm like a vice. That scream was all Elena needed. Now, she barked, her voice cutting through the humid air. In an instant, the jungle erupted into chaos. Bullets whizzed past trees, striking the Vorthik with pinpoint accuracy. Grenades exploded, sending shockwaves through the underbrush. The aliens reacted quickly, their biomechanical bodies shifting and adapting to the sudden attack. One scout grew armored plating over its chest, while another sprouted razor-sharp claws from its limbs. But the apex vanguard didn't falter. Elena leaped from her position, tackling one of the scouts to the ground. She drove her combat knife into its glowing core, the source of its power, and twisted hard. The alien let out a high-pitched screech before collapsing into a pool of black ooze. Nearby, Corporal Malik used a makeshift flamethrower rigged from scavenged parts to engulf another scout in flames. Its shrieks echoed through the forest as it writhed and melted into nothingness. The remaining Vorthik fought back fiercely, unleashing waves of bioelectric energy that crackled through the air. Trees splintered, and the earth shook as the battle intensified. Yet, despite their advanced technology, the aliens found themselves outmatched by sheer ingenuity. When one soldier ran out of ammunition, he hurled a rock tied to a rope, tangling an alien's legs and bringing it crashing down. Another used vines to create tripwires, causing a scout to stumble directly into a trap rigged with sharpened bamboo stakes. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last Vorthik scout retreated, disappearing into the canopy above. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the labored breathing of the vanguard members and the soft sobs of the rescued villagers. Elena stood amidst the carnage, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. She looked at the villagers, then at her team. "Good work," she said simply, though pride shone in her eyes. This wasn't just a victory, it was a message, a warning. Back aboard the Vorthik mothership, Calthun watched footage of the skirmish, his glowing eyes narrowing in confusion. How had these fragile humans defeated his elite scouts? Their tactics were unpredictable, their tools crude yet effective. For the first time in centuries, doubt crept into his mind. He turned to his advisors. Send more probes. Analyze their behavior. Understand their strengths and exploit their weaknesses. Little did he know, humanity's greatest strength wasn't something you could analyze or exploit. It was their unyielding will to survive. Inside a dimly lit command center buried deep beneath the Arctic ice, General Marcus Hale paced back and forth. The room buzzed with activity. Screens displayed maps of Earth, tracking alien movements in real time, while officers shouted orders into headsets. Despite the chaos, Hale remained calm. He had seen worse. Much worse. "Sir," said Lieutenant Carter, pointing to a monitor showing footage from the Amazon skirmish. "The Apex Vanguard wiped out those scouts, but it's clear the Vorthik are learning fast. Their next move will be bigger." Hale stopped pacing and turned to face his team. His voice was steady but carried an edge of urgency. "They think we're weak because we don't have their fancy tech. But they're wrong. What we lack in gadgets, we make up for in something far more powerful: adaptability." He tapped a button on the console, and a holographic projection of Earth appeared in the center of the room. The planet glowed faintly, its continents outlined in blue light. "This isn't just any world," he continued. "It's a death world, a place where survival is earned through blood, sweat, and sheer determination. Every human alive today is descended from survivors who faced famine, disease, natural disasters, and came out stronger. Elena Vasquez stood near the back of the room, arms crossed, listening intently. She knew what the general was saying was true. Growing up in the harsh deserts of northern Africa had taught her how to endure when others would crumble. Her skin bore the scars of sandstorms, her lungs had adapted to thin air, and her mind had sharpened under constant pressure. She wasn't special, she was human. And that's our secret weapon, Hale concluded, turning to address the entire room. We aren't afraid of pain. We aren't afraid of failure. And most importantly, we aren't afraid to fight dirty. At that moment, another officer rushed in, holding a tablet. "Sir, we've captured one of their drones. It's damaged, but intact." Hale's eyes lit up. "Bring it here." Minutes later, the drone, a sleek, spider-like machine covered in pulsating veins of alien technology, was wheeled into the command center. Scientists surrounded it, scanning its structure with handheld devices. One of them, Dr. Priya Patel, looked up at Hale. "Sir, this thing operates on some kind of neural interface. If we can reverse engineer it, we might be able to disrupt their hive-mind connection temporarily." Elena stepped forward. "How long will that take?" Dr. Patel hesitated. "With our current resources, at least 48 hours, maybe longer." "We don't have that kind of time," Elena muttered under her breath. Meanwhile, aboard the Vorthic mothership, Overseer Calathun reviewed the latest reports from his advisors. Images of the Amazon battle played on a massive screen, highlighting moments where humans had used crude weapons and improvised tactics to devastating effect. One clip showed a soldier using a tree branch as a spear to disable a scout. Another depicted villagers hurling flaming torches at retreating aliens. Calathun clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. These humans shouldn't have been able to win. They were supposed to be fragile, predictable. Yet, every encounter revealed new layers of complexity. Their individuality baffled him. In the Vorthic collective, unity was strength. Individual thought was weakness. But these humans, they thrived on independence. "What are they?" he growled, glaring at his subordinates. One advisor dared to speak. "Overseer, perhaps we underestimated them. Their adaptability stems not just from physical resilience, but also psychological factors. Each human acts independently, making them unpredictable." Calathun snarled, slamming his fist onto the control panel. "Then we must eliminate their unpredictability. Deploy additional probes across multiple regions. Study their behavior patterns. Find their weaknesses." But even as he issued the order, doubt lingered in his mind. Could the Vorthic truly conquer such a species, or had they finally met their match? Back on Earth, Elena watched as technicians worked tirelessly to decode the alien drone. She felt a spark of hope, not because of the tech, but because of the people around her. Humanity wasn't defined by its tools or weapons, it was defined by its spirit. And no amount of alien superiority could crush that. The Vorthic fleet loomed over New York City like a storm cloud, casting long shadows across the skyline. The aliens had chosen this bustling metropolis as their next target, believing that urban environments would neutralize humanity's unpredictability. Skyscrapers, crowded streets, and tangled infrastructure. How could primitive humans possibly thrive in such chaos? They were about to find out. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood on a rooftop overlooking Times Square, her rifle slung over her shoulder. Below her, the city buzzed with activity, not just civilians evacuating, but also volunteers preparing for battle. Ordinary people, shopkeepers, teachers, construction workers, had taken up arms alongside the apex vanguard. They weren't soldiers, but they shared one thing in common: survival instincts honed by life on Earth, the ultimate death world. "This is our home," Elena said to her team, her voice firm. "We know every alley, every shortcut, every weak point. Let them come." And come they did. The invasion began with a deafening roar as Vorthic dropships descended from the sky, disgorging hordes of biomechanical warriors. These aliens moved with precision, their movements synchronized by the hive mind. They spread through the streets like a flood, smashing vehicles aside and firing energy blasts that shattered windows and crumbled walls. But the humans didn't retreat. Alina signaled her squad, and within seconds, the first wave of traps sprang into action. Cars rigged with explosives detonated as the aliens passed, sending shockwaves rippling through their ranks. Hidden snipers perched on rooftops picked off stragglers, while guerrilla fighters armed with makeshift flamethrowers drove others into narrow alleys where ambushes awaited. One group of civilians used subway tunnels to launch surprise attacks, emerging from manholes to strike at the aliens' flanks before disappearing again. Another team repurposed abandoned construction equipment, using cranes to drop heavy steel beams onto advancing enemies. The Vorthic struggled to adapt to the ever-changing battlefield, their superior tech rendered useless against human ingenuity. In the heart of Manhattan, a towering Vorthic brute smashed through a building, its massive claws tearing apart concrete and steel. It roared triumphantly, only to be met with a hail of gunfire from all directions. Civilians hurled Molotov cocktails made from soda bottles and gasoline, setting the creature ablaze. As it thrashed wildly, trying to extinguish the flames, a young woman named Maria, a waitress who had never held a weapon before today, leaped onto its back and drove a crowbar into its glowing core. The beast collapsed with a thunderous crash, shaking the ground beneath their feet. High above, Overseer Cal Thun watched the carnage unfold on his monitors. His frustration boiled over. "How are they doing this?" he demanded, slamming his fist against the console. "They have no coordination, no unity. How can they fight like this?" His advisors exchanged uneasy glances. One finally spoke up. "Overseer, their lack of unity is their strength. Each human acts independently, adapting to situations faster than we can predict. Their unpredictability makes them dangerous." Cal Thun growled, pacing back and forth. He had underestimated these creatures once already. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Back on the ground, Alina led her team deeper into the fray. She moved with purpose, her every step calculated yet fluid. When a Vorthic scout lunged at her, she sidestepped gracefully, grabbing a discarded metal pipe and swinging it like a bat. The blow struck true, shattering the alien's armored plating. With a swift kick, she sent it tumbling into a pile of rubble. As night fell, the city became a war zone bathed in firelight. Explosions lit up the sky, and the air was thick with smoke and ash. Yet despite the destruction, there was something undeniable in the eyes of every human fighting, the fierce determination to protect what was theirs. By dawn, the Vorthic forces withdrew, battered and confused. They had expected an easy victory in the urban jungle, but instead they faced relentless resistance. Humanity had turned their greatest weakness, their individuality, into their greatest strength. Alina surveyed the battlefield, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Around her, survivors cheered, their voices echoing through the ruins. But she knew this was far from over. The Vorthic wouldn't give up so easily. Still, as she looked at the faces of those who had fought beside her, she felt a surge of pride. This was humanity's spirit, unpredictable, unstoppable, indomitable. And the aliens were starting to realize it. The Apex Vanguard regrouped in a makeshift command center set up inside an abandoned subway station. The walls were covered in maps, diagrams, and hastily scrawled notes detailing the Vorthic's tactics. Despite their recent victories, the mood was tense. Everyone knew the aliens wouldn't stop until Earth was either conquered or destroyed. Alina sat at a folding table, staring at footage of the urban battle. Every time she thought she understood the Vorthic, they adapted. Their biomechanical bodies repaired damage almost instantly, and their hive mind allowed them to coordinate attacks with terrifying efficiency. But there was something else, something that gnawed at the edges of her mind. "They're learning," she said aloud, breaking the silence. Her team turned to look at her. "Every fight, they get smarter, faster, stronger." Corporal Malik leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "So what do we do? We can't out-tech them, and we sure as hell can't outlast them if they keep evolving like this." Alina tapped the table, her eyes narrowing. "We hit them where it hurts. Their hive mind. Without it, they're just machines following orders." Dr. Priya Patel stepped into the room, holding a tablet. She had been working non-stop since capturing the alien drone, and dark circles ringed her eyes, but there was excitement in her voice as she spoke. "I think I've cracked part of their neural interface. If we deploy this signal disruptor," she held up a small device resembling a handheld radio, "we might be able to sever their connection temporarily. It won't last long, maybe 30 seconds at most, but it could give us an opening." General Hale entered the room, his expression grim. "30 seconds is all we need. Get me a plan." By dawn, the Vanguard had devised a strategy. Using stolen alien tech and repurposed human ingenuity, they created portable disruptors small enough to carry into battle. Each member of the team carried one, along with instructions on how to use it effectively. They would lure the Vorthik into a trap, then strike when the hive mind faltered. Meanwhile, aboard the mothership, Overseer Calathun studied the humans' behavior with growing unease. Reports poured in about their ability to adapt, not just physically but psychologically. Where other species crumbled under pressure, these humans thrived. Worse still, they seemed to relish the chaos. "What are they?" he muttered, pacing the bridge. His advisors remained silent, unsure how to answer. Finally, one spoke up hesitantly. "Overseer, perhaps they are not merely resisting us because of survival instincts. Perhaps they resist because they value their individuality, their freedom." Calathun froze, the word freedom echoing in his mind. To the Vorthik, individuality was weakness, a flaw to be eradicated. Yet here were humans, embracing it as their greatest strength. For the first time, doubt crept into his calculations. Could such a species truly be subdued? Back on Earth, the Vanguard launched its counterattack. A decoy squad led by Corporal Malik drew a large force of Vorthik into an open field littered with traps. As the aliens advanced, Alina activated the disruptor. A high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by silence. For 30 precious seconds, the Vorthik froze, their glowing cores dimming as the hive mind disconnected. Chaos erupted among their ranks. Without centralized control, they stumbled, confused, unable to act cohesively. "Now," Alina shouted. The Vanguard struck with precision. Soldiers fired upon disoriented aliens while civilians hurled grenades made from scavenged materials. One soldier used a grappling hook to scale a Vorthik brute, planting explosives directly onto its core. Another tossed a disruptor into a cluster of enemies, amplifying the effect. When the hive mind reconnected, the remaining Vorthik retreated, dragging their wounded with them. The humans cheered, but Alina remained focused. This victory came at a cost. They couldn't rely on the disruptors forever. As the dust settled, Calathun watched the aftermath on his monitors. Fear flickered in his glowing eyes. These humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something deeper, something primal, something the Vorthik could never understand. And that scared him more than anything. Overseer Calathun stared at the holographic projection of Earth, his glowing eyes narrowed in thought. The humans had proven themselves unpredictable, resourceful, and infuriatingly resilient. Every attempt to crush them only seemed to make them stronger. But Calathun was not one to admit defeat, not yet. He decided on a new strategy. A direct confrontation, a test of endurance that would push humanity to its limits. "Challenge them," he commanded his advisors. "Choose a barren wasteland where their tricks and tools will be useless. Let us see how these so-called Deathworlders fare when stripped of their advantages." The chosen location was the Australian outback, a vast, desolate expanse of red sand, scorching heat, and merciless terrain. It was a place even humans avoided unless absolutely necessary. To Calathun, it seemed perfect. If the Apex Vanguard could survive here, they truly deserved respect. If not, they would die trying. The challenge was broadcast across Earth's communication networks. Humans. Calathun's voice boomed, cold and mocking. You claim to be strong. Prove it. Meet us in your own wasteland. Fight us directly, or surrender now. General Hale listened to the message with a grim smile. They think they've picked the perfect battlefield, he said to Elena and her team. What they don't realize is that some of our toughest fighters come from places like this. Elena nodded, her expression hardening. She knew exactly what he meant. Among the Apex Vanguard were individuals who had grown up in the harshest corners of the planet. Deserts, tundras, volcanic islands. For them, surviving extreme conditions wasn't just a skill, it was second nature. Preparations began immediately. Supplies were gathered, but sparingly. Water, food, and ammunition were limited, forcing the team to rely on their wits and adaptability. Nomadic tribes native to the outback joined the effort, offering invaluable knowledge of the land. They taught the vanguard how to read the wind, find hidden water sources, and use the environment as both shelter and weapon. When the day of the battle arrived, the outback stretched endlessly under the blazing sun. Waves of heat shimmered above the ground, distorting everything in sight. On one side stood the Vorthic warriors, towering biomechanical beasts armed with advanced weaponry. On the other side stood the Apex Vanguard, flanked by nomads carrying spears, boomerangs, and makeshift explosives. Calathun watched from orbit, confident in his force's superiority. Let them tire themselves in the heat, he sneered. Their bodies will fail before ours. But the humans didn't charge recklessly into battle. Instead, they faded into the landscape, disappearing like ghosts. The Vorthic advanced cautiously, their sensors scanning for movement. Suddenly, the ground beneath them erupted as hidden traps triggered. Explosions sent plumes of sand into the air, disorienting the aliens. Spears and rocks rained down from unseen attackers perched atop rocky outcrops. Elena led her team through the chaos, using the shifting sands to their advantage. When a Vorthic brute charged toward her, she sidestepped and hurled a smoke bomb crafted from local plants. As the alien stumbled blindly, Malik struck from behind, driving a sharpened metal spike into its core. The battle raged for hours, each side taking heavy losses. The Vorthic struggled against the relentless heat and unfamiliar terrain, their biomechs overheating and malfunctioning. Meanwhile, the humans endured, fueled by sheer willpower and intimate knowledge of the land. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, catching the Vorthic off guard. Their systems weren't designed for such rapid changes. The humans, however, adapted effortlessly, wrapping themselves in blankets woven from animal hides provided by the nomads. By morning, the Vorthic forces were battered and demoralized. Calathun watched in disbelief as his once invincible warriors faltered. For the first time, doubt consumed him completely. "This isn't over," he growled, though his voice lacked conviction. The victory in the canyon was bittersweet. The Apex Vanguard had proven their strength, but they knew the war wasn't over. Overseer Calathun still commanded a massive fleet orbiting Earth, and as long as the hive mind remained intact, the Vorthic would keep coming. Humanity needed a way to strike at the heart of the invasion, the central core that controlled the collective consciousness. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood in the command bunker, staring at a holographic map of the Vorthic mothership. It loomed like a mechanical leviathan, its surface bristling with weapons and defenses. "If we can take out their hive mind," she said, her voice steady despite the enormity of the task, "we'll break them." General Hale nodded grimly. "It's risky. If we fail, they'll crush us. But if we succeed—" He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood what was at stake. Dr. Priya Patel stepped forward, holding a small device resembling a wristwatch. "This is our best shot," she explained. I've modified the signal disruptor to emit a concentrated pulse. If we plant it near the central core, it could permanently sever the connection between the Vorthik and their hive mind. Elena turned to her team. We're going in. The plan was audacious. Infiltrate the heavily guarded mothership using stolen alien tech and disguises made from captured biomatter. A small strike team, Elena, Corporal Malik, and 2 other Vanguard members, would sneak aboard during a diversionary attack on the fleet's perimeter. Once inside, they'd navigate the labyrinthine corridors, evade patrols, and reach the core chamber. As the team prepared, civilians across Earth rallied to support the mission. Engineers worked tirelessly to retrofit human ships with alien technology scavenged from downed drones. Pilots volunteered for the diversionary assault, knowing many wouldn't return. Even the nomadic tribes of the outback contributed, crafting camouflage suits infused with reflective materials to mimic the Vorthik's shimmering armor. When the moment came, chaos erupted in space. Human fighters swarmed the outer edges of the fleet, drawing fire away from the mothership. Amidst the confusion, the strike team slipped through undetected, their disguised vessels blending seamlessly with the alien craft. Inside the mothership, the air was thick with tension. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent light, casting eerie shadows along the corridors. The team moved silently, their every step calculated. When a patrol approached, Elena signaled for them to freeze. They pressed themselves against the wall, holding their breath as the Vorthik passed by without noticing. Reaching the core chamber required navigating a series of security checkpoints. At one point, Malik used a stolen neural interface to bypass a locked door, his hands trembling as he worked. "Hurry up," Elena whispered, keeping watch. Finally, the mechanism clicked, and the door slid open. The core chamber was unlike anything they'd seen before, a vast, pulsating orb suspended in midair, surrounded by tendrils of glowing energy. It radiated power, humming softly as if alive. This was the heart of the Vorthik collective. "Plant the device," Elena ordered. One of the team members attached the disruptor to the base of the core, while Elena and Malik covered him. Just as they finished, alarms blared throughout the ship. Reinforcements were on their way. "We need to move," Malik shouted. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging blasts of bioelectric energy as automated defenses activated. Behind them, the disruptor began its countdown. With seconds to spare, they reached their vessel and launched into space just as the pulse detonated. On board the fleeing ship, Elena watched through the viewport as the mothership shuddered violently. Its lights flickered and dimmed, then went dark entirely. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthik hive mind was silent. Aboard the dying mothership, Calthun staggered as the connection severed. His glowing eyes widened in horror as individual thoughts flooded his mind. Fear, doubt, uncertainty. The unity he had relied on was gone. For the first time, the Vorthik were free, and humanity had given them that freedom. The silence aboard the Vorthik mothership was deafening. Without the hive mind, chaos reigned. Individual Vorthik, freed from the collective consciousness for the first time in their lives, stumbled through the corridors, disoriented and confused. Some collapsed to their knees, overwhelmed by emotions they had never experienced before: fear, anger, curiosity. Others simply stood frozen, unsure what to do without orders. Overseer Calthun staggered into the command center, his once proud form now slumped with despair. The glowing veins running through his organic armor flickered weakly, mirroring his fractured state of mind. For centuries, he had believed unity was strength. Now, faced with the raw vulnerability of individuality, he questioned everything. "They've done this," he muttered, his voice trembling. "They've broken us." But not all Vorthik reacted with despair. In one corner of the ship, a group of freed individuals gathered cautiously, their movements hesitant but deliberate. One of them, a scout who had fought in the Amazon, spoke softly, its voice trembling yet filled with wonder. "We think for ourselves now. Is this freedom?" The realization spread like wildfire. Freed from the oppressive control of the hive mind, many Vorthic began to question why they had ever followed it. Why had they invaded Earth? Why had they destroyed countless worlds? For the first time, they saw themselves not as conquerors, but as victims of their own system. Back on Earth, the Apex Vanguard celebrated their victory cautiously. They knew the war wasn't truly over until Calathon was dealt with. Intelligence reports indicated that the Overseer had activated a self-destruct sequence on the mothership, intending to take Earth with him in a final act of vengeance. "We can't let that happen," General Hale said firmly, addressing Elena and her team. "If that ship blows, it'll wipe out half the planet." Elena nodded, her expression grim. "Then we stop him, whatever it takes." With no time to waste, Elena led a small strike force back into space. Using salvaged alien tech, they boarded the crumbling mothership once more. The vessel groaned under the strain of the countdown, its systems failing rapidly. Sparks flew from exposed wires, and sections of the ship broke away, drifting into the void. Inside, the team encountered pockets of resistance from loyalist Vorthics still clinging to the old ways. These remnants attacked ferociously, driven by blind obedience, even as their world crumbled around them. But the Vanguard fought with equal determination, knowing the fate of billions rested on their shoulders. Finally, they reached the bridge. Calathon stood there alone, his massive frame silhouetted against the dying glow of the core chamber. His eyes burned with hatred as he turned to face them. "You think you've won," he snarled. "Even if you kill me, my people will rise again. And when they do, they will destroy you." Elena stepped forward, her rifle trained on him. "Your people aren't yours anymore. You took their freedom. We gave it back." For a moment, Calathon hesitated, doubt flashing across his face. Then, with a roar of defiance, he lunged at the team. The battle was fierce but brief. Outnumbered and outmatched, Calathon fell, his body dissolving into black ooze as the self-destruct timer ticked down to mere seconds. "Go!" Elena shouted, planting explosives near the core to accelerate the destruction and ensure nothing survived. The team sprinted toward their escape pod, leaping inside just as the mothership erupted in a blinding explosion. Through the viewport, they watched as the fiery debris scattered across the stars, taking Calathon's tyranny with it. As the pod descended back to Earth, Elena leaned back, exhaustion washing over her. Humanity had survived, but more importantly, they had shown mercy, even to their enemies. And somewhere among the surviving Vorthic, whispers of gratitude began to spread. The aftermath of the battle left Earth scared but alive. Smoke still lingered over cities that had been battlegrounds, and craters marked the landscapes where alien ships had crashed. Yet amidst the destruction, there was a sense of hope, a quiet determination to rebuild stronger than before. Humanity had faced an existential threat and emerged victorious not through brute force, but through ingenuity, resilience, and unity. In the weeks that followed, recovery efforts spanned the globe. Civilians worked alongside soldiers to clear debris, repair infrastructure, and care for the wounded. The Apex Vanguard became symbols of heroism, their names whispered with reverence in every corner of the world. But Elena Vasquez refused to see herself as a savior. To her, this victory belonged to everyone who had fought, not just those on the front lines, but also the ordinary people who had risen to meet extraordinary challenges. "They didn't win because of me," she told General Hale during a debriefing session. "They won because they're human." Hale nodded, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. "And maybe that's something worth remembering. We're not just survivors. We're builders, creators, fighters." Meanwhile, humanity's relationship with the surviving Vorthic began to evolve. Many of the freed aliens expressed gratitude toward their former enemies, seeing them not as conquerors but as liberators. Some even sought refuge on Earth, eager to learn from the species that had shattered their chains. Scientists and diplomats worked tirelessly to establish communication, sharing knowledge and forging tentative alliances. One day, a delegation of Vorthik arrived at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Their leader, a scout named Zinthar, stepped forward hesitantly, its voice trembling as it addressed the gathered humans. "You have given us freedom," it said. "We do not know how to repay such a gift." Elena stood among the crowd, watching silently. She remembered the fear in Zinthar's eyes when they first met in the Amazon rainforest. And now, she saw something else. Hope. It was a reminder that even the most broken could be healed, given time and understanding. General Hale responded on behalf of humanity. "Your freedom is your own," he said. "Use it wisely. Together, we can build a future where no one has to live under oppression." As peace talks continued, humanity turned its gaze outward. The encounter with the Vorthik had awakened a new sense of purpose. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a beacon of resilience and adaptability. Governments pooled resources to develop advanced technologies inspired by alien designs, while exploratory missions prepared to venture into the stars. Humanity was ready to take its place among the galaxies, not as conquerors, but as guardians of freedom and hope. On a quiet evening, Elena stood atop a hill overlooking what remained of Times Square. The city buzzed with activity below, lights twinkling like stars against the night sky. For the first time in months, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The scars of war would always remain, but so would the lessons learned. She thought about Calthun and the Vorthik fleet, about the battles fought and lives lost. And she thought about the future, a vast, uncharted expanse waiting to be explored. Somewhere out there were other civilizations, other challenges. But one thing was certain: humanity would face them head-on, armed with courage and conviction. As she gazed at the heavens, Elena felt a surge of pride, not just for herself or her team, but for all of humanity. They had proven themselves worthy of survival, worthy of thriving. And somewhere deep inside, she knew the galaxy was watching.